Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Scott Luton and the one and only Kevin L. Jackson with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Kevin, how are you doing today?
You know, it's been a great day. Thank you very much for asking. Beginning of the week, beginning of the fall. Hey, let's do this.
Well, before long, you're going to need a couple of clones based on everything you've got going on. But great to have you here. We've got an outstanding conversation. In fact, I'm really excited about the show that we've got lined up today. We've got a big mover and shaker joining us as we dive into, Kevin, some of the intriguing work taking place at or near, I'll call it, the intersection of artificial intelligence and manufacturing. Kevin, we should have sold tickets to today's show, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, talking about moving and shaking. I mean, it's an earthquake here with with Eric. I tell you, he has some. There's some great stuff going on over at Forward Edge AI. I mean, I'm amazed at all the stuff they're into.
So a good calamity, a positive calamity, then what we're going to have here today over the next hour or so. So today's episode, folks, is presented in partnership with our friends at Microsoft, who's doing some pretty cool things in industry in their own right, helping us all move forward. So more on that to come. So Kevin, I've got some bullet points. I'm going to introduce our speaker. You ready to go?
Oh yeah, I'm ready to go. Go.
All right. So I've got our speaker today. Our dear guest has a phone book of recognition and accolades and awards. So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here, but an award-winning business leader. Our guest today brings more than 30 years of experience in industry. He's an honoree with the National Inventors Hall of Fame. How about that?
Yes.
He's a winner of one of NASA's highest civilian honors. He's also the first African-American Small Business Innovative Research Tibbetts Award winner. And those are just a few of his accomplishments and honors. His company, Forward Edge AI, as Kevin mentioned, is focused on artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity. I love that. So please join me in welcoming Eric Adolphe, CEO with Forward Edge AI. Eric, how you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you guys.
It is so neat to rub elbows with you today. Kevin, I really appreciate you bringing some of your moving and shaking friends here today.
Oh, no, I tell you. I mean, Eric really is he's an inventor. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's smart. He taught me a lot of things, that's for sure. And he's a long-time friend. And I really appreciate him taking some time to spend with us. Thank you, Eric.
Wow.
I agree.
That's a lot. I want to meet that
guy. Well, Eric, you're too humble too. You're very modest, given all that you've done in your career. So I want to start here. This is where we're going to start. So fortunately, as much as you and Kevin know each other and have worked together and done big things together, our audience may be new to some of what you've done. I want to get to know you a little better first before we get into some industry talk. So in talking with you before we kick things off, I understand you grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a neighborhood, Eric, that was highly diverse, and it had a big impact on your worldview. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that is actually, as I said, these were my formative years, right? So the one that really kind of sticks out is a neighbor, as I said, she was an Auschwitz survivor. And I would sit summer days, just sit on her porch, and we'd just talk, and she would tell me about her experiences. She'd show me her tattoos, and that made a big impact on me. And the entire community was that way. We had Polish immigrants, we had immigrants from Puerto Rico, we had immigrants from Jamaica that made up the fabric of this community. And the best folks borrow from each of these, right? Which is what I ended up doing. I borrowed from each of these. And what I learned, or I got out of that experience, was a love of history. I'm just really nuts about history. And it wasn't something that was taught in school. It's just, I love to read.
Mm.
I love watching, anything that's related to history. It's just one of those things, and that's how I keep myself busy when I'm not working.
And Kevin, my hunch, and Eric, love you to weigh in too. I'm a big history nerd as well, and what's old is always new again. We can learn
Mm.
so much, no matter how advanced we get, how technological we get. Kevin, we can look back to all sorts of different parts of history and always find new lessons to be learned and applied. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I find that you learn how to apply new technologies by looking at old technologies and how they were applied in the past and how they affected our society. And there's so many lessons that you can learn, you know, from just being a student of history.
Hmm. Eric, it sounds like you would agree with that perspective, Eric.
100%, 100%. Well said.
Um, and I'm thinking, especially where I'm going next, because we're going to ask you about some of your work at NASA, some of your groundbreaking work at NASA. Whether it's modern history or even ancient history. I was reading about the construction of the pyramids and how
Mm.
there's so many scientists still today. We're just mind boggled of how things actually happened and were built and constructed. So, hey, mysteries still abound at all sorts of different parts of our global collective history. So let's talk about NASA, Eric. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a big. I think we're in such. Kevin and I have talked about this before. We're in such an exciting time when it comes to space exploration, as we see the private sector get involved. Man, in what's taking place, and who knows? Who knows? Especially with the current missions, the lunar missions taking place, and getting ready to, put our newest stamps on the moon and who knows beyond. Tell us though, what did you do at NASA, Eric?
Yeah, so a little bit of history there. Um, Space has always been sort of in my background. I was always a dreamer. I was a huge, and still am, Star Trek fan. And most of what I learned, Star Trek, actually. And when I was a young engineer, I worked for the FAA, and the government announced this new program called Technicians in Space, and they were going to
Okay.
send people to the Hubble and satellite and other satellites to do repairs, and I signed up. And unfortunately, the year I signed up, the Challenger accident happened,
Mm.
and so the program was canceled. Um, reason why I bring that up is just a few years later, after I launched my company, I was sitting in an office with the lady, Charlotte Adams. I was being incubated and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I just started my own company. And she came to my desk and she put this yellow book on my desk, and it said Small Business Innovation Research Program, NASA. And just like everything else, I was intrigued and I started thumbing through it. And I saw this requirement. The shuttle Challenger accident had occurred, and they were trying to solve that problem. Well, I went home and I was watching Star Trek, and I saw Kirk was at his seat, command seat, and Nurse Chapel came with this thing that looked like a tablet computer, and it was and gave him a battle damage assessment. And I said, "Wow, that's the solution. I want to go build that." And yeah, and back then there were no tablet computers. There was no wireless networking back then.
Right.
And I said, I want to build that. So you see where that spark came from. It starts off with that curiosity and trying to solve a specific problem, and then being passionate about the subject. Well, I wrote the proposal, won that SBIR, and that was something like $60,000, right? And we began to build that technology, and it didn't exist. And in the whole time, I got to tell you, it was probably the best time of my career, best time of my life. I can remember sitting in the back of this white van, not a creepy white van, but a white van. And we had our laptops in there, we had all of our gear, and we were sitting there on the side of the road writing code on a battery. And we were given a certain amount of time to prove that the technology could work. And we were driving to the Kennedy Space Center, and we were writing code as we were driving, taking turns driving. We got to the gate of the Kennedy Space Center and didn't know if it was going to work.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and we walked in, and I'll never forget this. The project manager said, "Well, this is your chance. If this works, then we're going to move to phase two. If it doesn't, this project ends." Man, we fired that thing up, and it worked. And I got to tell you, I still get misty about that, and that just defined my company, my career from that point forward, and that whole attitude of nothing's impossible came from that. That dreaming beyond the horizon came from that, and it's just the way we've kind of carried ourselves in our new company, right?
Oh,
Yeah, it's
Eric.
amazing
Yeah,
how
Kevin, go ahead.
it's amazing how a vision and a passion combine to create reality. And that's basically what happens over and over and over again.
Kevin, well said. And Eric, there's so many. Man, just what you shared in the last 7 minutes. I wish we could spend the next 4 hours there, because to be able to be inspired by an idea that you find in the world of science fiction or make believe or whatever that didn't exist in real world, and then to go to work, rolling up your sleeves, making that happen, and the trials and tribulations that come with any kind of innovation, new technology of consequence, and then to be able to pass that big hurdle, and it not just change your trajectory, but it changes the NASA
Yeah.
trajectory. And of course, as we all know, many folks know at least, a lot of what has come out, all the feats and projects and successes and failures, all of
Mm.
it, from our space program, from NASA, from the history to up to now, it's benefited all the rest of us and all the rest of humanity in industry. So, Eric, we're going to have you back, and you're going to tell us a lot more stories
Sure.
of you and your work, and of course, you and Kevin's work both at NASA. And Kevin, I'll give
Yeah.
you the last word there.
Yeah. Before you leave that space work, I
Okay.
mean, I want to get, Eric is still involved in space, and we talked about history, and everybody knows about all the junk that we've put up in
Right.
space that goes around the Earth, and before long, all the satellites are going to be hitting each other because it's going to not be enough. I mean, Starlink by itself is like thousands and thousands of satellites up there. But recently, I understand that Forward Edge actually may be doing something about all that junk that's up in space. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, and I am so happy to be back in space. To be quite honest. Yeah, so we recently received notification that we were selected for a joint Space Force Air Force SBIR um, to develop basically a device that will lead the way to the future space internet security. And what we're doing, and there's AI involved in that, but we're doing is we're going to be securing the data links that's going to be used for low Earth orbit satellites and orbital robots that are going to be basically in orbit, cleaning, grabbing space junk and doing reclamation and warehousing it and that kind of stuff. So we're going to be providing the technology that's going to secure the data links so those robots can act autonomously without having to have human intervention. So,
Wow.
so yeah, it's we're back in space, and this is man, I got to tell you, it's a blessing for us.
Wow. All right. So
Yeah,
before you ask,
sustainable space flight.
sustainable space flights, we need a lot more of that, because all that space junk up there. But I'll just add one more thing, and Kevin, and I'll pass the baton to you. I am so glad of all the things that you could have been inspired by from watching Star Trek. I'm so glad the Tribbles were not one of those things. So, all right, sorry, Star Trek dad joke maybe, but all right. So, Kevin, where are we going next with Eric here?
Well, the name of his company, Forward Edge AI. I mean, they are doing a lot of work in artificial intelligence, and I recall a story that Eric told me about. He was on travel. You may not remember this, Eric, but you were on travel and got off a plane and wanted to go wash your hands, went to the restroom, and it had these automatic faucets, and he put his hand down to the automatic faucet, and it didn't come on. He moved his hand back and put it back, and it didn't come on. And somebody came after him, and it was a white gentleman, and put his hands, and it worked just fine. And it was like it sparked your interest in artificial intelligence, as I understood. Is that true, Eric?
Yeah, and you're telling the Cliff Notes version of that because somebody called the police and they thought I was being a creep. So what happened was,
Wow.
when it didn't work, I observed, and that's the other thing about ingenuity. You observe things that others don't, right? And I observed that other folks were using the sink no problem, and each one that I went to had that problem. So I went underneath the sink and I started taking pictures of the part numbers and the manufacturing part numbers with the intent that I was going to, contact the manufacturers and let them know that they have a problem. Well, somebody saw me taking pictures under the sink. It was like, so when the cops showed up at the airport and they said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Your sinks are racist."
Oh gosh, man. All right, so Eric, man, all the stories, we're just going to be able to scratch the surface here today. But Kevin, AI, a lot of folks may still, although fewer and fewer, may
Yeah.
still be rolling their eyes here, right?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, artificial intelligence is, maybe I see it as a buzzword, but I don't think a lot of people really understand what it is, and they oversubscribe to Hollywood when it comes to artificial intelligence. I mean, at its basic, AI is the ability of a computer or a robot to perform tasks that are typically associated with human intelligence, such as learning and problem solving. But the goal of AI is to be able to do things like recognize patterns and make decisions and make judgments like a human. But let's be clear that AI is not the Terminator. Terminator is a hypothetical type of like intelligent agent referred to as artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Mm.
If realized, an AGI could learn to accomplish any intellectual task that human beings or animals can perform. AGI has been defined as an autonomous system that surpasses human capabilities in the majority of economically valuable tasks. So don't get these terms twisted. We're not there yet. The timeline of AGI is a subject of a lot of debate among researchers and experts. Some argue that it may be possible in years or a couple of decades, and others say it may take a century or more. And a minority of these believe that it may never be achieved. So
Wow.
don't be afraid of AI. AI is just a tool. It's not the Terminator coming to knock on your door.
Well, so Eric, speak to that. Undoubtedly, there's folks, we probably all know them in our networks, that when they hear the word AI, they may roll their eyes a bit, and it's just, they may perceive it as just the latest, tech flavor of the month. What must they know, Eric, about artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think I agree with Kevin, and I just want to distill his thoughts to one kind of point. What's different about AI, true AI, is that it has the ability to learn, right? Absent that, it's just code,
Mm.
right? And I want to give you an example. So Chat GPT is the thing that everybody's excited about, and people think it's going to take my job. It's coming for me, that kind of thing. I went on to Chat GPT and I entered a prompt. I said, "Are Canadians Americans?" And it replied, "No, they are not." And I said, "What continent is Canada on?" and it replied the North American continent. So then I did another prompt. I said, so are Canadians Americans? And it responded, no. And then I said, and I kept going with this thing. And I did Mexico, I did Haiti, all the countries in North America. And it kept coming back, was polite. It said, I'm sorry.
It was polite in his ignorance, right?
But the point is that demonstrated fairly clearly that it wasn't learning, right? So it's a large language model, right? The difference is humans have the ability to take in raw data and learn, right? That's something, as Kevin said, AGI or the singularity, maybe in 2060 we might get there. And the last thing, I'm going to go back to history for a second because there's a lot of, I see the Hollywood strikes and that kind of thing. People are like freaking out about it. So Thomas Edison and his team developed the light bulb, right? The Candle Makers Union went to Congress to try to stop him, right? Because they said he would take away all their jobs, and that's a case where there was some actual fear there, right? So Congress enacted a law that limited the deployment of light bulbs to hotels and not into people's homes. So the first deployment of the light bulbs were in hotels, not in homes, because they wanted to protect that market, right? So
protectionism.
So now
best.
take a look at today, right? Candle makers are not out of business, not by a long stretch. And what happened was candles now are used, the candle making industry is huge. And what they're using it for are for like intimate settings. It's changed what candles are used for. We don't use it for lights unless, we lose power, right? Birthdays, anniversaries, the things that are important to us. We don't sit there with a light bulb to wish somebody happy birthday. Candles. So so my point is, like art, poetry, literature, the things that make us human, right? We're going to still want them to come from humans, not from a machine.
Yeah.
So I would just tell people, just take a chill.
And I love that perspective. And two thoughts there. And Kevin, I'll get yours. One is that candle example. It allows candles to be used for their best possible purpose, right? Where they add so much value. Because to your point, you don't want to celebrate happy birthday with a bunch of light bulbs, perhaps. And then secondly, folks, we're going to get more into some powerful outcomes, especially in the manufacturing industry, where we're going to talk more about some big time outcomes that AI is driving. Kevin,
right.
Before we move on, and we're going to be talking about responsible and inclusive AI here momentarily, what else comes to your mind with what Eric just shared?
Well, the thing that jumped to my mind was the MoMA exhibit of AI, where they have created a whole new art form, dynamic art form that is never the same twice forever. And it's amazing what's possible when you are not limited by the human brain. I mean, AI can really expand uh, the possibilities in art, the possibilities in technology, and the possibilities in the human experience. And I think that's one thing we have to recognize. Um, Also, we have to recognize that AI only does what a human tells it to do. It's not sentient, right? It can't create itself, not yet. So it's all about humans. How are we going to use and leverage AI? Humans can do bad things, but hopefully most humans that use AI will do it in a socially acceptable and empowering way.
And Eric, give you the final word here before we move on. What would you say, Eric, for folks that that aren't enlightened like you and Kevin are about just how AI and generative AI, or maybe even the AGI that Kevin was talking about earlier, whenever it comes along, how it truly is going to revolutionize industry and automate the things, the redundant things that humans really get tired of, while accentuating, at least in my perspective, the creative side and enabling and empowering humans to really achieve new heights and do new things and create new value in the industry. Eric, for folks that may be taking a pessimistic view there, and this is just the latest trend, what would you say to those folks, Eric?
Yeah, I love that question. And to go back to the candle example, back then when Edison was doing the light bulb, there was one flavor of candle. It was right,
One
and
cent, I guess.
right,
1 cent, Eric.
1 cent, 1 cent. That was it. 1 cent, one color. Now you can get in every possible scent and color you can imagine.
and
That
shape.
yeah, and it unleashed further human creativity, right? And so I'm in favor of anything that reduces cognitive overload. That I'm in favor of. And a good example of that, right? Right now, AI has gotten pretty good. Computer vision has gotten pretty good. Machine learning has gotten pretty good at analyzing CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays, et cetera, finding, potential cancer, broken bones, that kind of thing, right? So AI can do that quicker and as accurate as the human physician or radiologist can.
Hmm.
That's important, right? So a lot quicker and as accurate, perhaps a little bit more accurate, right? So what does that do? Fewer mistakes. I'm going to miss, my doctor, physician, radiologist is going to miss fewer things, and it's going to reduce the load on the hospital staff, right? Now, imagine if I took a sonogram, right? A portable sonogram doesn't give off radiation, and I augment that with artificial intelligence, and I sell that to the consumers. Now, I could sit at home, I get injured, scan my arm, and see if, and it'll tell me if my bone is broken. So I need Advil or I need to get to a doctor. Scan my breast, and okay, there's a lump here. You need to go get this looked at. This looks like
Mm.
cancer. Could you imagine that? Now, if you could do that, you offload all of that stuff, the misdiagnosis, the stuff that's missed because people don't have access to a doctor or healthcare. You
Mhm.
offload all that stuff. Now you could prevent diseases. You could prevent problems in the future. Now, here's the dark side of that, and this is where we talk about, inclusive and responsible AI, right? So, uh, Black females have denser breast tissue, right? So, if you train your magical sonogram, AI augmented sonogram on one data set, and then you try to apply it to others in the population, what's going to happen? You're going to get a lot of faulty data, right? So, as an entrepreneur, why would I go out and invent something that's going to exclude a big part of the market? It makes no sense. But yet we do that every day because everybody around us in our lab looks like us,
Mm.
you know?
Eric,
So fill in the blank of whatever your company is,
yeah,
right?
so Kevin, I love Eric's example there because he's reading my mind. I was going to ask him about
Yeah.
why building responsible and inclusive AI, what that means, and why it's important. And I think that example really speaks to both of those. What else would you add, Kevin?
Well, first of all, being responsible with technology is just good business
Mm.
to start off with, right? But with respect to AI, everybody think about AI as in the future. It's not in the future. We're there, and we are accelerating. AI is used like Eric was talking about. AI is used for virtual assistants and chatbots. It's used in agriculture and farming, autonomous flying and security, surveillance, sports analytics, and a lot of different sports activities, manufacturing and production. We'll talk more about that. And even in livestock and inventory management.
Right.
And today, it's used to provide personalized recommendations, chat GPT accepted, to process thousands of transactions in a second. It can actually recognize problematic activities and protect you. It verifies applications for loans. It's another use case for having a much broader, database, and it can match clinical trials with patients. It drives robotic surgeons, and like Eric mentioned before, it reads radiological findings much better than humans. Okay,
Right.
it augments humans. Okay, the question is, where is AI not being used? Okay, you just don't know how much it's already affecting your life. So,
Well,
so I think AI with responsibility is key, and that's why Forward Edge is going to be a huge company, because that's the key to good business.
well said, Kevin. And going back to Eric's example about the inclusive part, making sure all parties, all users can benefit. And one other thing is, as Eric and Kevin, as both of y'all were talking about the healthcare applications,
Yeah.
there's so many transfers between the healthcare industry and the manufacturing industry. I mean, just kind of sitting back and listening to you both, capacity, quality, value, waste reduction, just to name a few. And so with that said, before we move on, Eric, anything else that you want to add? We're about to get into some anecdotes about the manufacturing industry and where you're seeing real value, AI-driven value. But anything else you want to share that we didn't touch on when it comes to that, how passionate you are about the need for greater responsibility and inclusivity when it comes to AI?
Right. Yeah. So great lead in. So as I mentioned, data is king. There was a project that happened about 4 or 5 years ago, Social Security Administration. Very laudable goal was to reduce fraud in Social Security and also in Medicare, right? And so they began developing an AI tool to sniff out, find fraud in filings, right? Which is, everybody wants that. As a taxpayer, you'd want that, right?
Right.
So what they did is you got data of known proven fraud cases, and they used that to train the artificial intelligence, right? That's the data. So it got quite good at recognizing these patterns. And then what they discovered is that it kept picking on senior citizens and kept picking on veterans. As it turns out, veterans who were suffering from post-traumatic stress and senior citizens were being over medicated for reasons that are kind of beyond me. So when you train the artificial intelligence to look for people who are consuming these drugs, and it's this large population, the AI learns that all senior citizens and all veterans are criminals, which is which is not what you want, right?
Right.
So now you have a data set, a raw data set of the entire population. It's going to keep picking out the veterans and the senior citizens, right? So this is another example. So when we say inclusive AI, people always think it has to do with ethnicity or something like that.
Right.
This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, right? So, and one more point before I know I'm going on here. On my first company, I had a consultant who came in to look at the company and tell me what was wrong. And he came to me and said, "You're the problem." And I was like shocked. I was like, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah, you're the problem." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because you're biased." Now I looked. I had black, white, Asian. I mean, you name it in my company. I said, "No freaking way." He said, "Yeah, you're biased." And he says, "Come step outside." And I stepped outside. I had a bunch of employees there. He says, "Look around." He says, "Don't you see it?" I said, "No." All of my employees were between 5'4" and 5'6".
Really?
Yes. And it was like, wow. And I was instinctively hiring people who reminded me of myself. And even though I was sort of quote unquote enlightened, everybody was 5'4" to 5'5". I'm 5'6". I'm
Unconscious
5'4".
bias.
So I got out of the hiring process. So we're all we're human. We're all susceptible to these things. And if you sit there and you think it can't happen to me, well, look again. That's the moral of that.
I love that. And Kevin, I'll get your word here before we get into some other anecdotes related to manufacturing. And, we do need to take, when we talk about the word inclusivity, we need to be highly inclusive and universal and very broad and holistic in terms of how we even define the word inclusivity. To Eric's point, your final word there, Kevin.
There are a indefinite number of domains within which you can apply inclusivity, right, and diversity. So let's not be just stuck on one domain.
Right.
And it's have an open mind. There's a lot of reasons.
And it's really important for AIs as they learn and learn and learn to have really big open minds. All right. So shifting, we've been teasing, we're getting there about examples in manufacturing of real practical AI applications and outcomes. So Eric, let's get into that. What's a couple of stories that you can share that you've seen AI really powerfully be applied in the manufacturing environment?
Yeah, there's one that I'm pretty excited about now. So when I was a younger guy, I was designing ASICs, or these are application specific, circuits, right? So very, very complex. And now designing these things for the performance we're looking for is just humanly not possible. And I was just shocked to see how AI has come and turned that around. And so humans are still involved, obviously, but now using AI, you can get to market a lot faster with designing these chips because a lot of this now could be done by AI. And I was just shocked by what can be done and what can be produced. And basically what I've been seeing in manufacturing, a lot of what AI can do is get me to the 80% solution. And the 20% that remains is where my human inspired creativity comes and takes in, right? But I can offload the monotony of designing a circuit, a printed circuit board or a chip to AI, and then bring in the human, intellectual property and inspiration to make it something unique in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Kevin, your thoughts on that?
Well, when it comes to manufacturing, one of the most visible areas is in connected field service, where technicians can deliver proactive and predictive service by connecting a manufacturer's smart product with the empowered technicians through, like in Microsoft's case, the Azure cloud, really. This drives innovation with connected products by reimagining manufacturing. Okay, just like Eric is saying, you make it better with improved insights that a human can bring, and you get efficiencies through the use of things like digital twins, right? An electronic version of the product that you can leverage to improve the product and improve the customer service. This also comes down to building an intelligent supply chain by using intelligent business applications to optimize digital operations. This really helps manufacturers achieve the right balance of customer service and supply chain cost. And much of this is really empowered and enabled, made possible even by artificial intelligence using broad, diverse data sets.
Yeah, well said, Kevin. One quick thought on both of what you just shared there. Eric, going back to what you have seen is, in your example, getting to markets faster. Hey, that's speeding up the monetization of new products. And even by extension, we're seeing AI-driven gains in limiting that order to cash flow, shortening that cycle, right?
Yeah.
And then, Kevin, to your point, one of the things I heard there, kind of going back to the healthcare example, where you've got finite supply of medical expertise, right?
Yeah.
Well, you also have, as I've seen for 20 years now, finite supply, seemingly, of maintenance talent, right? It's tough to get the newer generations excited about going in and fixing stuff. We're making some gains, but still there's a massive opportunity. So naturally, we're seeing AI applied and addressing these gaps where there's not enough maintenance know-how, valuable maintenance talent to go around. So naturally, industry is going to apply, make gains there. So I love these opening examples. I'll go back one quick question, Eric, before perhaps you share another anecdote. You mentioned ASICs. I am not a programmer or a technologist. My brain went straight, and maybe we're illustrating some of the different mindsets, to the sneaker, the shoes, ASICs, right? That's not what you're talking about, right? You're talking about,
No, not at all.
yeah.
I'm talking about a computer chip.
See, so we're illustrating. See, between two humans, much less the leap between all the different AI mindsets.
Yeah.
Okay, let's any other anecdote, Eric, that you might want to share from how you're seeing AI very powerfully being applied in the manufacturing industry and driving big outcomes and opportunities.
Yeah, like I said, even so, Kevin provided an example. There's lots and lots of examples, like making manufacturing lines more efficient. This has been something that has been going on since manufacturing lines were invented, right?
Right.
Ford, right, trying to make it more efficient. The reason why we were so successful in World War II is because we took a lot of the principles that Henry Ford developed in
Right.
automating the manufacturing line, right? And we got to the point where we're able to manufacture bomber aircraft. Like it was like one every hour was coming off the assembly line, right? So now, could you imagine AI, in the mix now? How quickly we can get to market, how the efficiencies we can get from manufacturing, and by the way, we're looking to take the factories and those jobs that we outsourced over the last 30, 40 years and onshoring it, right?
Mm.
How are we going to compete against a country that the labor costs are like a tenth of the cost of American labor costs? Well, the way you do that is more efficiency,
Yeah.
right? Is more efficiency. And that's what's gonna really propel this country forward.
And it is no longer, maybe 10 years ago, perhaps, Kevin and Eric, or whatever the right time frame is, no longer is it a nice to have, but it's going to be requisite to protect and grow that competitive advantage to what I just heard Eric speak to. Kevin, your final word here before we start talking about the future.
So the future is now. I saw a story over the weekend on CNN with Fareed Zakaria on GPS, and he was interviewing the Minister of Digital Transformation. He used to be the Minister of Digital Transformation for Ukraine, and he is credited with really inventing the asymmetric warfare that Ukraine is conducting against Russia with drones. And one of the aspects of that is how the electromagnetic spectrum is changing on a minute by minute basis, how you can control the drones, and conversely, how the Russians are trying to prevent the control of these drones. And artificial intelligence is one way that they are able to bring in data, modify their software, and then get the drones out there to complete the mission. So in this case, artificial intelligence is actually saving the country. It's not the scary Terminator, but it is a very difficult situation to be in. And artificial intelligence is doing a good thing, from my point of view, personal.
Eric, any thoughts there?
Yeah, that's quite a bit. And I saw that interview as well. What struck me, and I think that was mentioned during that interview. So the way we view artificial intelligence is different than the way other countries view artificial intelligence. And I'll give you, for example, not picking on anybody, but the way China views artificial intelligence and the purpose is completely different than what Americans do. And this is why I'm glad to be an American and glad to be here and in this day, this age of artificial intelligence. They're using artificial intelligence for in large part to control their population,
Mm,
right? We value our freedom, right? So if you look at the training data, if you look at the data that the Chinese government uses or regulates to train artificial intelligence, you will not see the word Tiananmen Square anywhere,
mm,
right, in the data set, right? Not allowed. Think about that for 1 second, right? So now you're excluding a set of data, and that's just one example. You're excluding a set of data, and then you're training the AI. The AI is only as good as the training data, right? And you compare that against what the American philosophy is, right? We want as much data as possible, as much diverse data as possible, whether it helps our argument or works against our argument, because then you're getting closer to true, you know, generative or artificial general intelligence, where it can then start to make decisions at some point in the future.
mm.
So today, if you think about this, if you have a product coming out of China, product coming out of the US, both are augmented with artificial intelligence, based on what I just said, which product do you want?
Mm. Kevin,
Right.
I'll let you answer that. Which now,
It's like it's when you look at the value of openness and truthfulness, it always outshines against constraint
mm,
and restrictiveness.
mm. Well said, Kevin. Very well said. And Eric, great example. I appreciate what you're sharing here today. So I want to ask a question. I know Kevin said the future is now, and I think all of us agree with that in many different ways. But in terms of thinking about what's next, where is AI going next? Kevin touched on a little bit on that on the front end. Eric, and your thoughts? Where is AI going next, and how fast are we going to get there?
Yeah, so this is why the company was founded, and this is it's in the name of the company, Forward Edge Artificial Intelligence, which is AI at the edge, right? So right now, artificial general intelligence, which is this kind of stuff that Elon Musk and these guys are talking about, is kind of the ability to, solve complex problems like a human can do, right? Humans are not, plugged into, well, most of us are not plugged into a wall.
Not yet.
We're not plugged into some wall, right? We're at the edge. We're always at the edge, right? And for you to be able to solve those problems at the edge, you need lots and lots of data, lots and lots of bandwidth, right?
Mm,
So that's not there yet. You don't have that kind of data and bandwidth available to you at home. So this is the next frontier. This is why we're there. Wayne Gretzky said this, and others have said this before as well. It's like, there's a book. It's called The Second Bounce. I think it's by Ron Cohen. I think the guy's name is.
yeah.
Most people can predict. Most entrepreneurs can predict where the when you throw a ball, they can predict where the first bounce will be. It takes an exceptional person to predict where the second bounce will be.
Mm,
And Wayne Gretzky said it even better. He said, I'm successful. I was successful because I went where the puck is going, not where the puck is. And in my view, my humble view, where the puck is heading, the problem we have to solve is AI at the edge. Great that we can have a supercomputer and figure this stuff out, in a factory or whatever. But when you could solve this at the edge, my God, that's when things are gonna really open up.
mm. Exciting, Eric. Appreciate you sharing that. Kevin, your quick thoughts, and then we're going to touch on some what Microsoft's doing, and of course, we're going to make sure folks know what Forward Edge AI is up to along those lines Eric just shared. But Kevin, your thoughts there?
Well, I really believe the power is in AI is at the edge, and how the different devices at the edge communicate with each other and create new knowledge at the edge that can be applied immediately.
Mm.
So that's where we're going. That's what edge computing is all about. That's what advanced communication is all about. This is really where the protection of data is all about. And you see hints of it when it comes to the power of social media.
Mm.
It's scary, but it's powerful. And we just
Scary
have
and
to learn
exciting.
how to control it, how to manage it.
Yes, scary and exciting all at the same time. It's like going 100 miles an hour in a convertible down the interstate or something. It's fun, but it is
Right, right.
scary. Um, all right, so much more to cover in limited time here, but I want to touch on this. And Eric, we're going to circle back with you in just a second, but I want to touch on, Kevin, some of the cool things that Microsoft is doing out in industry. Again, especially when it comes to leveraging AI and technology to power manufacturing forward. I got to touch before I throw it to you, Kevin.
Right.
I got to tell you, Microsoft. I read a story the other day about how Microsoft's working with PepsiCo, in particular, Cheetos. So my middle daughter, Grayson, I tell you, Microsoft's going to be a hero in her book. She's the biggest Cheetos fan, I think, in our extended family. And anything that keeps the Cheetos supply chain coming and protecting the quality of said Cheetos, Grace is going to want some engineering autographs maybe. But Kevin, kidding aside, what's some of the cool things that Microsoft's up to out there?
Well, artificial intelligence is built on top of a cloud computing platform. So Azure is really driving the use of AI responsibly in manufacturing. They're really using it to transform businesses and reshaping the organization across every industry. By integrating AI into the factory of the future, this really requires the business leaders to really do what humans do best: look at big picture thinking, and not just consider what AI can do, but what it should do. So Microsoft is really collaborating with these leaders and customers and partners to create a collective approach to engaging AI in a responsible manner. So they're really working with society to navigate what this shift really means, and to gain the insights and perspectives that we all need to share to make AI deliver good things for the world.
Man, Kevin, you got some channeling some Shakespeare today, some supply chain Shakespeare. I love that. But Eric, kidding aside, it's not every day. I mean, I know I get to collaborate with Kevin regularly, but it's not every day you get to sit down and rub elbows with an inventor, a visionary that has done big things with our national space program, and now doing big things with current and next generation technology. I mean, I know that there's a lot more stories, and we're going to have you back. I'll look forward to maybe connecting with you in San Antonio at some point soon. But I want to make sure folks know, in a nutshell, what Forward Edge AI does. So, Eric, tell us about that before we wrap here.
Sure. So before I do that, I wanted to make sure everybody was aware we are a Microsoft for Startups company.
Okay.
Microsoft was one of our first investors. We're Microsoft Startups, and we are what's called a Microsoft for Startups Pegasus company, which is at the tippy top of the Microsoft startup ecosystem. So I wanted to make sure everybody heard that.
And tippy top is a highly technical quantification of that.
Yeah. So Microsoft has been very good to us. So Forward Edge, there's three things when you think about Forward Edge. I want everybody to think about. What we do is we focus on, again, leveraging artificial intelligence to solve complex problems related to national security, public safety, and defense. Those are the three things we do. We don't do anything else. So everything we do is related to that. I want to be the one that's getting helping the firefighter get his or her job done. I want to be the one helping our guys and gals on the ground, boots on the ground, trying to protect our freedoms. That's what we want to be doing, right? So a couple of examples real quick. I mentioned earlier, we recently won a SIBR with Space Force, Air Force, to develop this space internet security thing. The reason why I bring that up is because, man, that is at the edge of the edge, right? So we always
Yes.
said we want to be at the edge. Well, you can't get more edgy than that. So think of it this way: we're using data provided by Microsoft. They have 8 trillion security signals that they've collected, cyber-related, security signals. We're using that to train our artificial intelligence to be able to detect a cyber attack that's attacking a CubeSat or an orbital robot, right? So that it could then detect these attacks, learn the patterns of life, detect these attacks, and then initiate an immune system kind of a response.
Yeah.
You are not going to get in your car and drive to that satellite to make a repair. It's got to be able to detect it, react, protect, right? It's got to be able to do it instantly, not waiting for a technician to show up, right? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is what we're doing.
That is inspiring and invigorating. And Eric, I really appreciate what you do and the opportunity to chat with you here today. We're going to definitely have you back. Eric, really quick, how can folks connect with you?
All right. So two ways. One is LinkedIn, and the other is telepathy.
Oh man, your sense of humor is almost as brilliant as everything else you do. I love it. All right, so Kevin, first off, your quick thoughts. Well, hang on a sec, Kevin, because something as you've mentioned Terminator. Eric, he's mentioned Terminator like 12 times a day, and I just that brings up Arnold Schwarzenegger's really intimidating face. First off, whenever we get to that point, let's make sure we teach those bots to smile a little better. It'll be a little easier to engage, right? And then secondly,
Probably
one of
better
y'all,
without the sunglasses too.
right,
Huh?
without and the shotgun, perhaps, and perhaps not the shotgun too. But one other thing, one of y'all mentioned about plugging in as humans and stuff. There was a great, since both of y'all may be sci-fi fans too, there was a great Amazing Stories episode way back in the day, and it was a robot grandmother that was sent out to a family that didn't have. I think they had just lost their grandparents or something. And there's an incredible scene there as part of that Steven Spielberg series, I believe, where at the end of the day, after the grandmother had finished her, nurturing duties, she was sitting and knitting in a rocking chair, being plugged into the wall, recharging for the next day. And it was just it really stuck with me as a kid. And who knows where we're headed next, right?
Mm.
So, Kevin, your quick thoughts of all the brilliance that Eric has shared here today, and I want to make sure folks know how to connect with you and all the cool things you're up to, especially with digital transformers.
Well, this is an amazing show. Thank you, Eric, for sharing all the things that your company is doing to make, develop and deploy AI in a responsible manner. So thank you for all those stories. And it's really about digital transformation. And that's what I do, digital transformation. So you can always catch me in Digital Transformers. That we release our show the fourth Monday of every month, and then we also have a the Buzz series, a Digital Transformers edition, on the second Monday of every month. And you can catch me on LinkedIn or X. It's Kevin_Jackson. And I'm going to go check with Eric on how to get that telepathy thing going.
Hey, I'm confident two of y'all will figure it out by next Tuesday, and then maybe let some of the rest of us know. And hey, if that's not good enough, you can find the Rolling Stones opening for Kevin L. Jackson's act every once in a while. So we'll find out where that world tour is there, Kevin. Big thanks. Going back to Eric Adolphe with Forward Edge AI. Eric, really appreciate your time here today, and the mission you're on, what you've done, right? But you know what? The best people I know, the most brilliant people I know, are the folks that They don't sit on their laurels. I mean, they appreciate the big things they've done, but it's about the mission today. And today, what I heard is how you are determined to find a way to help humanity on so many different levels. And Eric, really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Kevin, always a pleasure. I appreciate you helping to facilitate today's conversation. I
Thank
learned
you.
a
That was
ton.
fun.
It was a blast. Really, it was fun. It was practical. It was inspiring. A little scary at times, but because all of this comes with threats and
Yeah.
obstacles and burdens, right? But
Like I
it
say,
is an
go
exciting.
in with eyes wide open, right?
That's right. Gotta really shine a light or a very expensive candle, because the candle market's doing pretty well these days in that blind spot, right? Big thanks again to Kevin L. Jackson, of course, Digital Transformers. Make sure you find that wherever you get your podcast from. Big thanks to our collaborative partners over at Microsoft as well. Appreciate what they're doing to power industry forward. And to our listeners, hey, thanks for joining us on this journey. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as Kevin, Eric, and I have. We're all working on that telepathy thing. But hey, whatever you do, be sure to find Supply Chain Now, Digital Transformers, wherever you get your podcasts. And on behalf of our entire team here, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.